monster.
Hey guys, Koala here, and welcome to another top 7 powerful tank list. This time premium tanks. Once again, there will be no mercenary tanks and no artillery, and this is just premium tanks, so no tech tree tanks. And when I made this list, what I did was I thought to myself, okay, if I'm having a bad day and I'm losing a lot of games, what premium tanks do I like to pull out to get a win? And that's how I made this list right here. And so of course this will not, be the same for everybody, but this is just how I feel when I'm playing the game and I'm losing or I need wins. I pull out these tanks. And number 7 on the list, just like yesterday, are the Centurions. Now, the Centurions weren't 7 on the list yesterday, but they're 7 on the list this time. And you've got the Bellerophon, you got the Centurion 5-1, that's probably coming soon. You have the Primo Victoria, the Strittvang 81, the Huntsman, and of course this thing, the Atomic. All these Centurions, they're fantastic. Every single one of them is fantastic. Of course, I don't think I would play the Swedish Centurions or the Huntsman when you have the Atomic or the Bellerophon, but if you don't have those, or you don't have these, like the Atomic or the Bellerophon, then those ones are still fantastic. They just don't compete as well as this one. And these are tanks where I really don't care what tier I'm in. As long as allowed to use my gun depression, these tanks do phenomenally, regardless of tier. And in the background, you see the Atomic. And the Atomic I chose for the video because it's got the best rate of fire out of the Centurions. And it also has the best money-making abilities. And I needed money to equip some of the tanks later down this list that I haven't played in a while. So yeah, this is a phenomenal tank. All the Centurions are great, fantastic. You don't care too much what tier you're in. Of course, it is better when you're fighting tier 8s or tier 9s. But if you do have to fight tier 10s, your turret can handle it, and so can your rate of fire and your phenomenal gun. Both of those can in fact handle being bottom tier. Next for me at number 6 is a two-way tie between the STA2 and the FCM 50-ton. Both of them play pretty much the same way. They both have the same kind of a gun. They both have the same gun depression. They both have about the same mobility. The FCM has a little bit more health, a little bit more armor. But because of that, it makes it a little bit more clunky. But otherwise, both these vehicles are almost the same. And you play them the same way. And because of that, whenever I am feeling like playing a preferential tier 8, it's usually the STA2 or the FCM 50-ton. Just depending if I'm in the mood to train a French crew or to train a Japanese crew. That's pretty much what decides whether or not I play the STA2 or the FCM 50-ton. And so both of those make this list. And the reason they're so good is because they've both received very powerful buffs. So the STA2 on PC does not have preferential matchmaking, so it receives some love and some buffs to make it compete with the STA1 and other mediums. However, the STA2 on console does have preferential matchmaking, meaning it doesn't fight tier 10s, and so quite often you are top tier, if not just fighting some 9s. And it received the same buffs and love that the STA2 received on PC. So because of that, you have a fantastic tier 8 tank, which can easily compete with other tier 8 tanks, but that will never fight tier 10. Yeah, and so that's why I like the STA2. The FCM 50-ton is almost the same way. It's got an even better rate of fire. It's got arguably a better 90mm gun, in my opinion, because of its APCRs, its premium rounds. It's got more hit points. It's got a little bit more armor. You can side scrape with it, and it's got 400 meters view range. And it's got this the same mobility. And because of that, I love that thing just as much. And that thing also got a buff, a rate of fire buff, a gun depression buff from 8 degrees to 10 degrees, and a hit point buff from 1500 to 1600 now. So yeah, the FCM 50-ton and the STA2 are 6 on this list. At number 5, we have arguably my favorite premium tank currently in the game. I'm loving the Dragonslayer C. It's fantastic. Good mobility, fantastic gun. Allows you to get to positions like this quickly, kill artillery, and boom, one shot, 390 alpha damage, you roll for 400, easy peasy, no problem. This is pretty much the same gun that the Centurion 7-1 has, just slightly its gun penetration has been slightly nerfed, slightly reduced, but otherwise, it's pretty much the same thing. And you get the same trolley thing as the 7-1, where if you don't fully aim, you tend to miss, but it hits hard. This tank racks up damage rather rapidly. Like, it's surprising. Your DPM isn't the greatest, with over 11 seconds of reload with gun rammer on this thing and a good crew, but because of the 390 alpha damage, you're able to take safe shots. So when you have a smaller gun and you shoot your gun and somebody returns fire with you, that's what you call a trade. And smaller guns are very hard to trade with. You have to expose yourself more often, too, to do more damage. This gun, you don't. You fire once, like we've done in the STA-1, and boom, we leave. We're like, okay, he put a shell into us, we put a bigger one into him. We've won this trade. He's on less than 1,000 health, and we're still on almost 1,100 health. So, as you can see, we've won that trade. And I really, really like that about this tank. It's so easy to do damage in this thing, too, because of its penetration at 394, is it? At tier 8. And then you have these premium HESH shells, which alpha damage goes up from 390 to 480 with 210 millimeters of penetration. And you can fight tier 6s with this kind of a pen. So this is like, I think this is pretty much the same gun, also on the Charioteer. And I find you can play this thing a lot like a Charioteer, except you are also allowed to play it like a medium tank, more so than the Charioteer, because of your extra health and your better turning capacities and your better moving gun handling. So yeah, this tank easily by far is one of those that I pull out when I need a win, because yet again it's one of those tanks where if you're bottom tier, it's not as big of a deal as if you're bottom tier in, let's say, a Tiger 2. If you're bottom tier in a Tiger 2, I bid you farewell. Same even with an IS-3. A lot of the heavy tanks specifically kind of struggle when they're bottom tier. But this medium tank, and so do some of the medium tanks like the T44. But this one really doesn't. Of course, you'd like to be top tier, but if you're not, it's not the end of the world. Number 4 is the Dreadnought KV2, and this is a tank that when it first came out I thought was going to be awful. I'm like, it's just an up-tiered KV2. They reduced the rate of fire by 1 second. You can reload 1 second faster. Like, okay, sure. But I was completely wrong. This tank is beautiful. It's got much better horsepower per ton. It's packing over 16 horsepower, almost 17 horsepower per ton, meaning it gets up and goes, and its top speed is 37, which isn't bad either. The KV2's, I believe, is 35, but it has a bad horsepower per ton, so it barely ever gets to that. This tank, well, yeah, you can just scoot around and snap people. Plus, you have a 2.86 seconds aim time, which allows you to just aim in quickly and hit people. Like this guy. A regular KV2 would still be aiming. Not this one. We're ready to go. Fire it in. Set him on fire. And voila. No problem. Yeah. And these AP shells are disgusting. 700 alpha damage. Just like the regular KV2. But instead of the 110 millimeters of penetration, we have 170. Goes up 65 millimeters in one tier. And that's not all. You also have these heat shells, which have 250 millimeters of premium penetration. Holy Toledo, that's a lot of penetration. You can deal with any tank, any tier. And if you want to be the stereotypical KV2, guess what? You have HE as well, so you can still hit people with 86 millimeters of HE pen with 910 alpha damage, which Waffle Panzer IVs will in fact fear. And because of that, this is one of those tanks which, you know what, I've had a bad day. Let me pull this out and get a couple of wins. And I believe I have 3 pools medals in this tank. I have 4 pools medals in my life. 3 of them are in this thing, and I still have about, I think, 70 games in this. The amount of games I have in this is still incredibly low. And I have, yeah, it's a disgusting vehicle. It really is. And apparently we're heavier than the 257 as he rams himself to death on us, and we finish him off. And so yeah, this makes number 4 on my list. I'm sure some of you thought it would be higher, but no, it's number 4 for me. There are a couple others I think I would rather play to get wins. Maybe not as fun, but definitely to get wins. We've made it to the top 3, and number 3 is the Minuteman T29. Oh my goodness, this tank is a beast. I got this out of a war chest, I believe, or was it gifted to me? It might have been gifted to me. I can't keep track of these things. Huh. Anyway, we have it. Here it is. And just like the regular T29, this one can face off against any tier because of its turret armor, because of its phenomenal 105 millimeter, because of its gun depression. But this thing has another ace up its sleeve, and that is its side armor. This thing has 2 40mm plates along each side. 2. So that adds 80mm of spaced armor. So when people shoot you in the flush side and they hit both plates, it's about 250mm of effective armor. Yes, your Scorpion Gs will bounce off of this. And then if you angle it, it's almost indestructible. You can hit higher than the spaced armor and go through, and you can hit near the front drive wheel and go through as well. But those are harder shots, especially from range. And if you hit too low, the shells will hit the tracks and go underneath the tank. So this thing's side armor is disgusting, and oftentimes I find myself just exposing my side completely to the enemy because I don't give a care. It's like, okay, sure, shoot me in the side. You have to hit me in my drive wheel, and I can pretty much shoot you anywhere. And when you're in a matchup like I am now, where you're top tier, then you really don't care. And the reason this thing is so good at winning is because of what's going on now. If you're top tier like I am now, we have all these guns looking at me this game, and we're taking all this pressure off of my team as my team rips them apart, and so do I. And if you're bottom tier in this tank, you can still pull your own weight. You can still perform like a tier 9 tank can, giving your tank your team an extra tank to rely on. You are a dependable vehicle no matter what tier you're in, and that makes this amazing. Of course, there are big annoying maps like Nomenhan and Prokhorovka, which may mess you up, especially if there's artillery. But if you're on Prokhorovka and there's no artillery, this tank, of course, its turret armor and gun depression make it a phenomenal tank for that as well. So yeah, there's a lot of things about this tank that makes it phenomenal. The only downside is it's a bit of a boat. It turns slowly and it gets up to speed slowly. That's because of the extra spaced armor. Otherwise, though, this tank pretty much has no flaws, except people can cap out on you because of your speed. And so sometimes that makes you a little bit more dependent on your team. But otherwise, your team is going to be very dependent on you in this thing, and it will pull it off. And you will allow your team to do what they need to do to help you win. At number 12, we have the Chinese Tier 8 Preferential Premium, the 112. And this may surprise some of you, but for those of you who have played this tank, I think you'll know exactly why this is number 2 on the list. So this tank has the same hull, or should I say had the same hull as the 113 Tier 10 Chinese heavy tank. However, some preferential vehicles received some buffs on PC, and believe it or not, some of those buffs actually came to console. Just some of them. And one of them was a lower plate and side armor buff on the 112. So now you have more armor than the tier 10 version. Your lower plate is actually really good on this thing. It's, I believe, 140 millimeters of armor. And your upper plate is 120, of course, angled back even further. So the lower plate is still a weak spot, but they need about 200 to 210 effective to go through it if you're on flat ground. Now this little T44-100 did just pen my lower plate, but we were angled back, and so he was able to go through. And then, of course, the T34 can also go through your lower plate. But this lower plate is a harder shot to hit because of how low profile this vehicle actually is. And if you get close and personal to the enemy, they almost can't pen you. If you're face-hugging enemies, your upper plate is almost 290 millimeters of effective armor. And then if you're angling, you can get this thing over 300 millimeters. I have face-hugged the T30 who was shooting standard rounds, and he could not pen me. He had the big gun too, so he had, what is that, 276 millimeters of penetration? And this thing's armor just laughed at it. This tank, also, I have 156 games in, and I'm rocking an 83% win rate. It has the most win rate in my garage for a tank with over 100 games. And we are not done talking about the tank. It's got a 45 km/h top speed limit. It's pretty mobile. It performs almost like a slower medium tank. This tank can play the role of a heavy medium. But you have more armor than most heavies at tier 8. In fact, most heavies at tier 9 in this thing. You have a phenomenal turret. And you have 380 meters view range, making the IS-6 weep, because the IS-6 is your direct competitor with this thing. The IS-6 has 350 meters view range, and you are rocking 380. You throw optics on this thing, you can see well past the 445 meters view range. This tank is beautiful for that. And considering that the IS-6 is the direct competitor to this tank kind of puts it to shame. And when you get matched up against IS-6s, you kind of just weep for them. You really, really do. Because it's this tank is just that much better than an IS-6. Plus, the IS-6 has a 50% credit multiplier. This thing has a 55. And we are finally on to number 1. Some of you were probably expecting the Panzer V4. But no, I will not put the Panzer V4 on this list because I do not support the use of the Panzer V4. That's one of those tanks that is actually helping contribute to the killing of this game, because you're fighting tiers 3s who are just starting the game, and then they fight against that thing and then they quit. So I will not support the Panzer V-4, so I will not put it on this list. However, the Tiger 131 is a tank I do thoroughly enjoy, and though it is really, really, really good, and you may put some people at an unfair advantage, or disadvantage, should I say, it's not game-breaking. So I have it on this list. Your armor is not that great. It isn't. And your gun is not that great. But it is. It's got an 88mm gun with 161mm of standard penetration and 217mm of premium penetration. At tier 7, that's really bad. But your rate of fire with 220 alpha is disgusting. Once you get your gun firing, it just doesn't stop in this thing. You rack up damage so quickly. It's insane. And you have preferential matchmaking. You also have the same engine as the Tiger 1, giving you the same mobility as the Tiger 1. You have the 870 horsepower engine, and you have a 38 km/h top speed limit. I believe it's 38. Don't hold me to that. It might be 40, but I believe it's 38. And so you perform, kind of like the 112, much like a medium tank. Though a medium tank will block more damage than this tank will. I say that, but we're about to actually block some damage on this thing. I mean, it's thick. It's 100mm, and plus there's some awkward angles. But it's mostly boxy, and people will pen you. That's just the nature of the beast. But you'll kill them faster than they can kill you, because you also have 1,500 hit points, which is huge. Like, yeah, this is tier 8 levels of hit points. Tier 8 levels. But it's on a tier 7 heavy tank with preferential matchmaking. Yes, you'll never fight tier 9s. I know, it's crazy. It is crazy. What we're fighting now is pretty much as bad as it can get. The Fatherland I've loaded premium rounds for because I can't pen him with standard, but the 217 can surely go through the Fatherland. And we're going to keep these loaded pretty much for the remainder of this game and just rip these guys apart very, very, very quickly. And it's pretty much, that's it. This is just a brutal tank. You take an E75 and you talk about how brutal that tank is. This thing, tier for tier, is even more brutal. You just get into people's faces and you go, okay, let's see if you can kill me before I kill you. And that's what I'm going to do to this guy real quick. I'm going to let him shoot one more time before I decide to make the play. Once he shoots, I'm going to do it. And I'm going to be like, alright, how quickly can you kill me, bud? Because here I come. He fires, and that's it. It's done. It's over for him. Okay, here we go. 220 alpha damage every 4.5 seconds. You can get it even lower if you decide to go food on this thing. And then adrenaline rush. And we do weigh a nice portion, so we can ram him. So now he's a one-shot for us. But he gets finished off by the 53 TP. But, yeah. The rate of fire in this thing is disgusting. And that is what gets you the wins. Plus, you don't have to fight tier 9s. So you can carry your own weight every single game you play. Yeah, it's a beautiful tank. I recommend carrying 2 repair kits. This is one of the few tanks. Actually, there are plenty of tanks I do this on. I recommend you carry 2. You will get ammo racked quite a few times in this tank, and your transmission is also in the front. So keep that in mind as well. But now you can see the mobility. It's not bad at all. I mean, we're going up a hill and going over bumps and such, and we're still keeping about a 30 km/h top speed, which is pretty good. That's not bad at all. We're catching up to these other guys. This Tiger 2 will catch up to him for sure. Yeah. Let's switch back to our standing rounds, and there's artillery. And watch this. Watch this. This is impressive. We missed the first shot, but our rate of fire is so good that before anyone else has the chance to stop and aim, we have the second shot out already. And yeah. So this is the #1 tank. I think when I just need a win, I pull out. It's like, all right, Tiger 131 time. Boom, let's get a win, and we do it. But thanks, guys, for watching. I hope you guys all enjoyed. If you did, slap that like button, comment, subscribe. Let me know what your list would have been or what you would have changed, or if you agree with some of these, you disagree with some of these, let me know in the comments below. And hopefully you guys will be able to win some games and get yourself a free STA2 or a free Bison T103. Alright, guys, that's going to be it. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll be seeing you guys all later. Take care, everyone, and peace out.